Mhm. Happy Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So, we are here to jump into the topic of AI in the context of decision support systems. So, a lot of what we focus on is related to the decision support type systems, not generative AI. And so, when we think about these systems, the real important part of things is how you interact with them in a way that you, the human, are still accountable, but also are making informed decisions. So when we think about the ways in which we can support or create decision support systems that enable you to make informed decisions, there's four things we want to consider. Okay, the why button. So why, AI, are you giving me
Yep.
this information, or what's the why behind your information? The hiddle, or the human in the loop design, where you still keep that human in the loop to some extent. And this goes back to the spectrum of automation and making sure things are not fully automated at this point when it comes to decision
Yeah.
support. Confidence level indicators. I'm tongue tied today. And these confidence level indicators, it's just like when you get information and you want to know with what level of confidence is that information being presented? How much can you really trust it? And then the ability to use sliders or some sort of way to visualize data. If you were to change things around, what are the what ifs that could be present, but also could allow you to make a more informed decision?
Right.
So, with all that being said, what are your thoughts about all of this?
So, I mean, I like we're kind of tagging on to our conversation from last week, which was a more general, here are the things, with AI you got to look out for. One is being transparent, having that human in the loop. You talked about the first one, I think the why button. So the why, I think that's always useful. Like, how did you come up with this
Yeah.
suggestion? Really important, though, everything we're talking about is certain uh, categories of work or professions. Think of a doctor, think of an attorney. They really need to see all those variables that went into it so that they can make a decision, especially if they're given multiple recommendations. So I really like, just expose some of that to a person when they want to see it. So I'm a doctor. AI has given me, I've put in whatever information. They've given me potential diagnoses and maybe even ranked them. Okay, well, let me see why. I need to, and again, because the human needs to be there to use their skills, their experience, their judgment, and a quick why. Why did we rank these potential diseases, for this patient? And that helps, it helps that physician come up with, based on that individual, the right solution.
The reason why I feel like this is also an important topic is, to your point, the system design and ensuring that you keep that human in the loop in that design. What
Exactly.
I also see here is an opportunity for people who are feeling threatened by AI and
Yeah.
how it can potentially take away or simplify the opportunity that they have in their organization. What this is also a way for you to look at your role today and how you utilize data,
Yes.
how you make decisions, how you instrument things where AI will become a part of that workflow. These are ways in which you need to think about your skills changing. So
Hmm.
instead of being the one who decides everything based on your review and analysis of the data, know that the data is now going to be analyzed for you. But
Yes.
because of that, you want to make sure that you understand what you're looking at. And that means that you change your skills, change from more of the doer in that process to the person deciphering and making decisions based on your analysis.
Right. It's just something else in your toolkit, right? We our brains can only understand and process so much data, and there's data out there we don't understand or even know about, so it's just another thing in your toolkit to use to help you make those sound decisions. And one of those, that human in the loop, you don't want to go too far, at least yet, with most AI, and go AI just automate and take over.
Yeah.
So another way of addressing that is keeping that human in the loop. So I think you and I were talking the other day about these tools that big HR organizations use, and they're just saying, looking at the criteria and skills needed for a position, and they're scanning those resumes and pushing them out. Nope, 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 yes, 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 maybe, maybe, maybe. Do you really want them to push out the no? No, design that system so you've used that data, you've presented it in a way that people still have the humans still in that loop to look. You flagged certain resumes rather than eliminated all the resumes. So keeping that human in the loop in the systems you're designing right now is pretty important.
And that scenario around resume reviews within organizations has been one that I've seen several
Yeah.
times now over the last few weeks. Because what's happening is you have hundreds and hundreds of people applying for one or two or three positions. And now what's happening is people, because of that volume, the people that are doing things manually are getting to that top layer or top level of resumes, sifting through and finding a dozen that fit the bill, and then everyone else gets rejected. And so when you think about bringing AI into that particular scenario, it's a really good example of how the AI can go through or AI can go through those resumes and help you pull out those top, 20% of the 500,
Yes.
and then allows you to look at things in a way where it is more comprehensive.
Yep.
It's a more fair process, but that also means that your role is no longer sifting through everything. It's only the resumes in that instance that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so with that, one of the other things I think that's important to note is, and this is part of what I did my dissertation on, so it's near and dear to me, is looking at confidence levels of these types of systems. So give me an indication of how confident you are in your decision to say that these are the top 20%, and let me then decide whether or not I feel like that's sufficient, or is the confidence level so low that I feel like I should do some of this myself.
Right. And right, you're building trust by designing this into your AI. You're also building that trust,
Mhm.
and that's a good example to illustrate when we're giving these tips. We talked about one, the whole why. Giving that information. Two, keeping the human in the loop. Three, the confidence level indicators. Well, okay, now you can combine some of those things. I give you
Mhm.
a confidence level indicator. Well, what's that based on? Well, there's the why. Get the why from the system. So there are a lot of things you can do. There's just so many things from even a design perspective, let alone the data perspective, to make the AI more valuable, more reliable, and to start building that trust, and to keep people from becoming complacent, especially in really, really complex situations, or ones where life and death could be at stake.
Mhm.
So anyhow, all of these things play nice together.
And that's a really key point, is designing. At this point, we are in a place where designing, especially decision support systems that utilize AI, requires that you're incorporating one or more of these recommended best practices. If you are not, you are setting your organization or your user up for either making mistakes or poor
Yeah,
decision making, or complacency,
or
where
complacent.
people just become complacent and they're like, you know what, it's doing everything for me. Let me just, allow it to do what it does. and, think about what I'm having for lunch kind of thing.
Yes,
You know?
exactly. And then when things go wrong, you've been sitting at your desk,
Yeah.
listening to podcasts or whatever, and have
And
no
you
idea
can say
how
it
to
was the
act.
system's fault. At that
Yes,
point, you can say it's the system's fault. And that's where we don't want things to go, because when we think about, human factors at its core, it's about understanding people doing work and how do you make things safe
yes,
just as well as efficient and effective.
yes,
And so with that in mind, one of the other things that we had is that fourth takeaway is the different opportunities or to present what if scenarios.
yes,
So here are, multiple different ways in which, you could use this information to make decisions. It's very much like when you look at a multiple choice test and the answers are three different ways, but you've got to figure out what's the right one based on the scenario in that question. So if you look at things in that way, you then have the opportunity to kind of slide and adjust things that allow you to see, if I adjust things a little bit, how does that change the bigger picture?
yeah.
And with that being said, how do I use my human judgment, my human intuition, my human decision making capabilities to determine from those options which one is the best one to apply?
Yes, and it can help you project too, right? So, when you have those where you're kind of controlling variables. Okay, you're recommending this. What if? And I know this is good timing too. Talking about climate resiliency and being able to plan ahead for different adaptation or changes you can make in infrastructure, whatever it may be. Planning, change that slider. What if little variables change, whether it's your population, whether it's, the growth that occurs just from a building perspective? How's this going to change our risk? So
Right.
you give people that insight and control while also exposing. That's a way of the why. Why are you telling me to do this? Well, I can kind of see it's a little bit based on population. It's a little bit based on, weather patterns, whatever it may be. So that's another great way of surfacing how the AI, what variables are considering, and what may be different now or in the future that is the human, so that you can, yeah, the sliders are great, kind of move those variables around and see what the outcome is then.
And when you think about all of what we've described in terms of the different ways that you can interact with that AI and making decisions, what it also brings to the surface is, as we think about the ways in which it changes our role within any sort of workflow that we have in our organization, critical thinking, decision making, and problem solving. So some of those higher order cognitive processes that we go through when we're interacting with systems, we're now having to utilize more of those critical skills in a way where we have the AI partner with us in those
Yes.
processes. So that means that organizations that are thinking about implementing these different solutions or technologies have to think about, how are we training up our organization and the individuals in the organization to think differently, to use information differently. And that's a really critical part as well. It's not just about training on this is what the system does, but it's also what you as the user or
Human.
consumer has to do differently.
Yeah, exactly. It's opening that black box, right? So that the human still is involved in that process. They're still able to make decisions. They're still able to use their skill and experience, to drive the outcome. And again, I always emphasize, especially if things are wrong, or there's something that goes wrong at some point with those systems. You want the users to be active, not complacent, and to have the data they need to make those decisions. So it's almost like human factors, or UX in a way, has taken a little, it's just a different way we have to think. It's a different way we
Exactly.
have to work.
Right. And it's taking what we have historically applied to automation and looking at
Mhm.
automation, we are now looking at AI as that level of automation that's able to learn and to interact with us in a more natural way than we've historically seen with the research that's done around
Yep.
automation. So just as a recap, think about that Y button. Also think about that
Human in the
human
loop.
in the loop design. You still need your human involved. And then that third one, which is your confidence levels. So
Yes.
give me some level of transparency, like you said, around the black box
Yes.
and what's going on in terms of the inputs and how confident the AI is and the suggestions. And finally, those different scenarios where I can move levers and see what does that mean in terms of what I'm getting and how do I utilize it to make the best decision.
Yep. What variables are impacting? Yep. That
That's
matters.
right. That's right. So that's our recap for today. Thank you so much for listening. Let me turn on our info at Lean Geeks. Contact us if you have any comments or questions. Again, we appreciate you joining us and have an awesome